نهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة. الحمد لله على منة الولاية وكفى بها منة. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا النبي المؤيد والرسول المسدد والمصطفى الأمجد والمحمود الأحمد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين سفن النجاة الأعلام. من ركب سفينتهم نجا ومن تخلف عنها هلك. ثم أما بعد, respected elders, brothers and sisters, السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. We are continuing from where we left from yesterday in regard to the qualities and the attributes of Al-Muttaqeen. And as I said, that we are in the time frame or in the presence of Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. So it would be extremely appropriate and very worthwhile to speak about these further attributes that the Imam speaks about in regard to the traits or characteristics of al-Muttaqeen. And yesterday I basically spoke about 2 or 3 characteristics of these attributes of al-Muttaqeen. In the sense we spoke about, they are always anticipating death, their hopes are little, they are always in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قَرِيبًا أَمَلُهُ قَلِيلًا زَلَلُهُ خَاشِعًا قَلْبُهُ قَانِعَةً نَفْسُهُ. All these attributes that the Imam speaks about basically makes the personality of a muttaqi, makes the personality of a God-conscious person. Now the interesting thing is that when we try to link the concept of wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wasalam alayh to good deeds, because there is somehow a common misunderstanding which indicates to some people that wilayat Ali ibn Abi Talib per se is enough for salvation, less good deeds. Are you following what I'm trying to say? I'll explain. There are some people in the world today that they believe that if I show love to Ali ibn Abi Talib, if I show love to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that emotional connection to Rasulullah, that emotional connection to Ali ibn Abi Talib, هذا الحب للنبي, هذا الحب لعلي ibn Abi Talib صلوات الله وسلامه عليه كاف كحجة لي أمام الله سبحانه وتعالى يوم القيامة حتى وإن مثلت أمام الله من غير عمل ومن غير صلاة ومن غير زكاة ومن غير حج وما إلى ذلك. Okay? فلا بد أن نربط بين ولاية أمير المؤمنين وبين العمل الصالح. There has to be a connection between the wilayah to Amir al-Mu'mineen, يعني our love, our affiliation, our affinity to Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wasalam alayh, and with that we must also produce good deeds, because it's not sufficient to come on the day of judgment before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say to Allah that, Ya Allah, I come to you with the love of Rasulullah, I come to you with the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib and AhlulBayt, but I'm sorry, I was not good enough, or I did not have time enough for prayers, for salah, for zakah, for hajj, for good deeds, good akhlaq, whatever the case may be. Well, that in itself is not a good argument before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because love to Imam Ali and love to Rasulullah is conditional by good deeds. It has to be conditional by good deeds. And love for Rasulullah and Imam Ali is conditional on the basis that their lifestyle and the way they did things, and the way they behaved in public, and the way they communicated the message should have priority over our own way of thinking and our own way of culture and the way we do things. Right? For example, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we are to argue in hindsight that there are two ways in seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One way is, for example, to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, you know, and one way is a more of a shorter way than just having to apply all that Allah wants from us. And I read to you from a book by one of our contemporary scholars in regard to this issue. The book is called Divine Justice. The author is Ayatollah Mudahid, if you heard of him. Alright, very well-known scholar. He writes a book. That book is called Al-Adl Ilahi. I actually recommend that we read this book so that people can correlate and understand why certain things or activities take place in the world today that seem to be at face value contrary to God's justice. For example, disfigured people, natural disasters, hurricanes, whatever the case may be, right? Why do they take place in the scheme of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how can we correlate or relate this to the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because this is one of the means and ways that non-religious people, for example, atheist, agnostic, whatever the case may be, always argue about when it comes to the question of the existence of God. Because their perception is what? If there is a God, then there should not be any of these things taking place in the world, right? If there is a God, then why should there be poverty? If there is a God, why should there be people who are terminally ill? If there is a God, and they raise all these issues as an argument against the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's very much worthwhile reading that book, because it answers and it basically eliminates so many doubts about this. So he says, if someone was to assume that one way is to attain divine pleasure and acceptance, and another way entails winning the approval of one of the Imams, and let's say for this argument Imam Hussein, and that each of these two ways can independently ensure man's salvation, then that person would have fallen prey to serious misguidance. You know what he's saying? He's saying, if you are to assume that there are two ways to get to Allah, one through what Allah expects from you, and one which is totally independent of Allah, and that is through Imam Hussein or one of the Imams, salawatullahi wasalam alayhi, then if you are to assume that, following what I'm going to say, the description, then that person has actually gone into serious misguidance, or had fallen prey, يعني وقع ضحية للضلال والعياذ بالله. Why? Because he says the following: in this incorrect belief, it is held that God is pleased with one set of things, whereas Imam Hussein with another set of things. This is what you are saying. You are saying that to please God, there are certain criteria I have to follow. To please Imam Hussein, there is an independent criteria that I have to follow as well. For example, he says, God is pleased with performance of compulsory acts of worship like prayers, fasting, pilgrimage, jihad, charity, truthfulness, rightfulness, service to mankind, benevolence to parents, and he is also pleased by refraining from sins like lying, injustice, backbiting, consumption of alcohol, adultery, etc., etc. But in contrast, Imam Hussein is not concerned with such things. His pleasure instead is attainable through the like of mourning and weeping, or at least feigning to cry, for instance, on his youthful son Ali al-Akbar. So what is he trying to say? He said there are people who think that to attain God's pleasure is more difficult, and it's a path that entails more work than to attain the salvation and the path of Imam Hussein. Why? Because to attain God's pleasure, you have to do prayers, you have to have good akhlaq, you have to refrain from all the haram, you have to do all the halal stuff, you have to do all the ta'at, you have to be of good character, you have to help people, you have to be there for others, and so on. So while attaining Imam Hussein's pleasure, I'm not saying this is true, I'm saying this is what some people think. Right? While some people think that attaining Imam Hussein's pleasure is just by crying for him, or weeping for him, or even pretending to weep for Imam Hussein or for one of the members of his family. The Allama Mutahari continues, he says, hence, what is at issue with Imam Hussein here is distinct from those things that concerns Allah the Almighty. As a logical conclusion to such a distinction, the attainment of divine pleasure, therefore, is difficult since it entails performing many tasks to win his approval, whereas winning the approval of Imam Hussein is relatively easy. Only mourning him and just beating are required. And once Imam Hussein is satisfied, he will then use his influence in the divine kingdom through intercession to mend one's affair. All prayers, fast, pilgrimage, jihad, charity in God's way, etc., which we fail to perform, will be forgiven, and sins committed will be instantaneously wiped out. Such concept of shafa'ah or intercession is not only false, but it is incorrect, and it amounts to an act of polytheism. Shirk. يوصل الإنسان إلى مرحلة الشرك, or shirk in God's lordship, and an insult to the holy status of Imam Hussein, whose greatest source of pride was his total submission and devotion to Allah. I.e., there is no separation between what would please Allah and what pleases Imam Hussein salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Therefore, in order to attain this salvation through the Imams must become our role models, right? If they say we should behave in a particular pattern, in a particular way, in a particular scenario, when we face a particular challenge, when we are faced in front of a particular idea, then we cannot assume our own way of life over that of the Imams. Yes, does Islam entertain culture and tradition? It does. If it does not contradict what? An Islamic value. Alright? If it does not contradict an Islamic value. For example, can someone claim or say, for argument's sake, we should unify as Muslims, we should have one Islamic food? Excuse me? How are you going to achieve this? So, for example, Islamic food is qima only. And any other food is cultural, so it's not Islamic. So if I crave butter chicken, this is not Islamic. Alright? Or if I crave, for example, kifta, which is a traditional Lebanese dish, which is like kebab on skewers, alright? That is not Islamic. Is that possible to unify food on the basis of, no, culture can be accommodated in that regard, and culture can be a component of our lifestyle. Fine? Another concept, you go to Qom in Iran and you dare walk in the street without a abaya. You dare, I challenge you. Alright? Go to Qom and a lady walks in the streets in Qom without abaya. The question is abaya classified as the only Islamic code? No, it's not. Yani, the hijab that our sisters are wearing today in the audience, does it qualify to be an Islamic hijab or not? It does, right? But culture in that part of the world says that you will be looked down upon if you don't put the abaya. So you conform. What do? You conform when you are in a particular setup. But that person cannot argue against you that if you do not wear the abaya outside that setup, then your Islamic dress code is no longer Islamic. No, that's cultural. The abaya in Qom is cultural more than it is religious. Yes, it qualifies better as a dress code. I can't argue. It does, because it's flowing, it's not see-through, it is not tight. So all the qualification of what makes a dress Islamic is what? It's three qualities. What makes an Islamic dress code Islamic? Three qualities. Cannot be tight, right? Cannot be see-through, all right? So it can't show the figure of the body. It cannot be transparent. So you're wearing something, but I can tell the skin is showing, or that's number one. And number three, it has to have a sense of flow to it. Okay? A sense of flowness to it. So if it doesn't show the skin, if it is not tight and it doesn't show the curves of the body, and it's a bit loose and, you know, comfortable, then it qualifies to be an Islamic dress code, whether it comes from Timbuktu, whether it comes from the inner suburbs of Russia, whether it comes from, you know, the outskirts of New York. I don't care where it comes from, right? If it qualifies for an Islamic dress code, then it becomes what? Islamic. Now, so the sisters don't get offended. Men also have to have this type of clothing, right? Yeah, and for those who think, oh, I'm a man, I can wear skinny tight jeans. For example, I'm going to be a little bit difficult on the boys today. Skinny tight jeans or low-cut jeans. Low-cut jeans, habibi, I don't need to know the mark of what you're wearing under your jeans. I don't need to know that you're wearing bonds, right? That's not moral, right? When you go into sajda, when you go into salah, and you are bending for rakwa and sujood, and everyone knows the mark or the trade of your God knows what, that is not modesty for a man as well, right? Modesty is something that should be there for man, and it should be there for a woman as well. Same case scenario. Do you think that men, do you think that men are the only species on earth that are attracted to the opposite gender? That the opposite gender women are not attracted to men? Yeah, of course they are attracted to men. Why do you think men, for example, go and train for 8-9 hours in a gym so that they could put a bond singlet, and sometimes no singlet, right? Just a pair of pants in order to show the abs and the biceps and the tattoos and what have you. Because there are signs of attraction. There are signs of attraction. Does Islam morally allows the immodesty of a male in public? No. I'll tell you even further. Those who argue that Islam made a segregation in terms of what constitutes the awrah of a man and what constitutes the awrah of a woman, right? So the awrah of a woman is everything from head to toe except the palms, okay, and the legs, all right, and the face, okay. Even some Maraja say you have to cover them, but nevertheless, not the face, the legs, all right. On the other hand, the awrah of a man is from the navel to his knees. For example, if I'm going to argue this, well, that is a misconception. In fact, that is a very misconception. The minimum awrah of a man is that in the absence of woman, not in the presence of woman. So when Allah allowed this, He allowed it by virtue of the fact that men used to have to go to the what? To the fields for work. So there are men among men. So Rasulullah said, because of the heat, because of the requirement of heavy work, the minimum you can show to one another as men among men is what I said. But when a woman walks in, no, you have to wear a full dress code so that she would not be attracted or attached to the way your body is performing or the way your body looks. But this is not taught in our schools. This is not taught to our men. What our men are taught, dress as you want, whatever you want, feel free. Right? Even if you want to wear a pair of shorts and come to the mosque and pray with a pair of shorts as well, no problem. You know? Even if you want to wear with something less covering than a pair of shorts. Right? But that is if you're alone. Not if you are in the company of men or women. Because Islam is fair when it talks about certain issues. It talks about certain issues from a very logical perspective. We don't take matters into our hands because it suits us to be in that particular situation or that particular environment. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Secondly, having said that, we must also understand from the perspective of the khutbah of al-muttaqeen that Imam Ali salawatullahi wasalam alayh speaks about, and he addresses these attributes of the muttaqeen, the characteristics of the muttaqeen, what constitute a person to be among those who have the value system and the paradigm of God righteous and God conscious people, is that they have a concept in mind that they never let go of. What is that concept in mind? Here, Imam Ali addresses, after I skip one thing, because we spoke about it immensely. Imam Ali says, وَأَكْلُهُ سَهْلًا وَأَكْلُهُ مَنْذُورًا أَكْلُهُ, meaning when a mu'min or a muttaqi wants to eat, he eats little. He doesn't overeat. He doesn't overconsume. Imam Ali sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even when it comes to question of meat, he says, لا تجعلوا بطونكم قبورا للحيوانات. Don't allow your stomach to become graveyards for animals. And I remember once I was in a country, I don't want to mention the country, I was there for the first 15 days of Ramadan, and I'm lecturing every night for 2 hours in that community. And then one of those community members invites me over to his house, and he didn't know that I don't eat meat. So I ate rice. So he looked at me, he said, Sheikh, you're not eating meat? I said, no, I don't eat meat. He said, are you a Muslim? Excuse me? What the hell have I been doing for the past 15 days? You know, I've been fasting, I've been lecturing, I've been coming to the mosque, I've been leading prayers. You know, are you a Muslim? It's like meat and religion are interrelated. You cannot separate yourself from being a Muslim if you are not an eat-meater. Are you serious? You know, this disconnection or this connection between the two does not relate. You know, when we speak about the characteristics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what do we find in his biography? In his biography, the companions or his wives used to say, كان يمر علينا الشهر والشهران ولا يوجد دخان أو لا ينبعث دخان من بيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. What does that mean? For a month or two, there is no smoke that comes from the house of the Prophet. You know, the houses during that time in Medina and Mecca did not have roofs. So they just had walls. So whenever you can tell whether there is a smoke coming out. In fact, people used to wait outside the chambers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, waiting to see whether there is any smoke coming out of the Prophet's house, and go and knock at his door so that he would invite them in for a lunch or a dinner. Oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that when the ayah says that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bil-ma'na yastahi min al-mu'mineen. So he's shy or modest about the mu'mineen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet, Bas, let me tell you something, Wallahu la yastahi min al-haq. If you want to come to the Prophet, come at a time that is appropriate. Don't come at a time, for example, when he's resting. Don't come at a time when the Prophet is, after 2 months, manages to get a meal, where now there's smoke coming out of his house, and maybe all that he's cooking is half a kilo of meat. Right? Maybe all that he's cooking is half a kilo of meat. Imagine half a kilo of meat distributed to all the people of Medina. Forget it. No, you would not even get a morsel of food. Imam Ali is described wrongly even by his followers, unfortunately, until we came to know the real meaning of these two words, that Imam Ali was anza and batin. شنو يعني أنزع and batin? يعني short and stumpy. He was short and fat. And if you look at some of the depictions of Imam Ali salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi, some of the drawings of some painters, you would see, for example, that they draw Imam Ali as a stumpy, bulky person sitting down with his sword, and that he is short. Two problems with this hadith. Anza or batin do not mean short and stumpy. Batin, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam already described. He said to Rasulullah said to Imam Ali, أنت الأنزع من الشرك البطين بالعلم. He said to Imam Ali in one of his descriptions, you are the one who is free. Anza means you are less in something. So you are less in shirk. There is no shirk in you. You don't have any shirk in you. And batin, you are heavyweight when it comes to what? Knowledge. When it comes to, otherwise, how did Imam Ali manage to strike Amr ibn Wad into half? Or Marhab? Marhab was like an electricity pole. You know? كان عمود كهرباء. مرحب. مترين وما فوق. مترين ونص هذا الرجل كان. 2.5 meters. If Imam Ali was short and stumpy and he cut him in half, how did he manage this? He got a ladder or something so that he could climb on him, and it doesn't make sense. You know? So we need to relate to AhlulBayt from their perspective. You know? Imam Ali's diet used to be what? خبز الشعير. لبن يعني milk. Right? جريش الملح. Salt. Who eats this? Who eats this and get a belly? No. Right? Imam Ali was very particular in his lifestyle. So the Imam describes منذور أكله. He doesn't eat much. سهل أمره. سهل أمره في أمور الدين. ما يتعصب للدين بطريقة تجعل منه شنو؟ تجعل منه متطرف. الله سبحانه وتعالى بالقرآن شنو يقول على قضية السهولة في الدين؟ أو التساهل، إنه يكون الإنسان سهل، مو يكون متساهل، يكون سهل في أمور الدين. ما جعل الله عليكم في الدين من حرج. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He brings down His value system, when He brings down His law, He does not want to inconvenience you. That's what haraj means. Allah does not want to make you inconvenient in regard to His laws and the way you practice them. Don't go overboard in the way you show your religiousness, because your religiousness is something between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to show anything, show your gratitude, show your good self, show your good service, and that becomes a natural attribute of your existence. Now this is the point I'm going to get to, which describes the hadith that I have not yet mentioned. The other quality of someone who's muttaqi is وَهُوَ حَرِيزًا دِينُ. شو يعني حَرِيزًا دِينُ? The description so far, you will see that his hopes are simple, his shortcomings are few, his heart, he's all conscious of Allah, his spirit contented, his meal is small and simple, his affairs are easy, and his religion is always safe. What does that mean? That means he does not compromise on his religion. He makes sure that his religion is always safe. It is not infiltrated by culture and tradition that contradicts what? An Islamic value. No, he does not mix and match, you know, culture and religion. He makes a separate entity between what is specifically culture and what is specifically what? Religion, right? And here comes the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that explains that particular word, which says harizon or harizan dino, right? As the Imam salawatullahi salamu alayhi put it, harizan dino. His religion is always safe in his regard, his living standard is concerned. Here the hadith says, listen to the hadith of Rasulullah, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to anyone who is created when that created being asks you, forces you, coerces you, pushes you to what? To disobey the creator. Allah. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. يعني الزوج ما يقدر يجبر زوجته على معصية. الزوجة لا تستطيع أن تجبر زوجها على معصية. الزوج لا يستطيع حتى وإن كان زوج أن يأمر زوجته بمخالفة شيء من الدين. شيء من الدين. A husband cannot force his wife to go or do or perform something against a religious law. A wife cannot do that also to her husband. A father. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about fathers, parents, what? حتى إذا كانوا مشركين. Right? Even if they were non-Muslims, what should your lifestyle be with them? What sort of relationship you should have with these parents? طاعة مشروطة. وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما بس وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا. بس بالنسبة لطاعة الآباء وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إليه وبالوالدين إحسانا. بالنسبة للآباء المسلمين أم الآب الله سبحانه وتعالى قرن عدم الشرك به بأسمى قانون ممكن الإنسان أن يطبقه. شنو هذا القانون؟ وبالوالدين. يعني لما الله سبحانه وتعالى يقص علينا قضية وقضى ربك, Allah has deemed that you should not associate partners with him. What follows should be as important, right? اللي يتبع هذه المقولة هذه الآية لما رأس الآية تبدأ وقضى ربك أن لا تعبدوا إلا إياه. Your God has decreed that you should not worship anyone beside him. What follows should be as important. And what did follow from this? وبالوالدين إحسانا. So as important as it is not to associate partners with Allah or not to worship anything beside Allah, it is as important to be what? Kind to your but qualified. What is the qualification of being kind to your parents or obeying your parents? If they do not ask you or call you to do anything against what Allah wants or says. Absolutely. مثلا اجتني بنت في سيدني. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. تعذروني اليوم أنا صحيت بستفنك يعني معذرة. اجت بنت, a girl came to me in Sydney. Hijab, salah, absolute, obedience to Allah, mashallah alayha. She said, Sheikh, I have a big problem. I said, what's the problem? She said, my father, he's religious, alhamdulillah, yani, good. But we have a wedding coming up. I said, all right, tell me. What's the story? He said, I know dancing is haram. Who's speaking now? His Holiness, the Father, is speaking. He said, I know dancing is haram, but هذا ابن عمك. هي أول مرة يتزوج بيها، إن شاء الله ما يتزوج طول عمره بعد. This is the first time he is getting married. It's okay, just for this time, to get up and dance. Now, what are we doing here? We're mixing what? Culture and religion together. يعني there is sometimes like it suits me. It suits me. That dad, it suits him for his daughter now because his nephew is getting married. For his daughter to do what? To get up and dance. I want to ask that dad, would you allow your daughter to go with her friends to a prom and dance there just once because it's only once in a lifetime? He'll probably have a heart attack. Right? He'll probably, and you don't call it prom here, do you? You don't know what I'm talking about? Ball. Ball. All right. Ball. So here when it suits us, we break what? We break لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية, because now it suits me. It's okay, he's your cousin, he's your nephew. or whatever the case may be, you should get up and do something nice for him, you know, or you do dabka for him, very infamous Lebanese dance, all right? They jump up and down and stomp their feet on the ground, all right? وهاي من ترى رقصات الجاهلية قبل النبي، قبل بعثة النبي. على كل يمكن اللبنانيين الآن ما يدعوني لأي مجلس، بخور أحسن، مو مشكلة، يلا صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. فالقضية يعني the idea is what? The idea is don't justify it. Either do it and don't break the law and say it's okay now or it's okay. No. You know what? The ulama, the jurists say, if you know you're doing something wrong, do it, but don't change its actual original condition. Meaning, what? Do not make halal haram and haram halal. Why? Because halal Muhammad halal ila yawm al-qiyamah wa haram Muhammad haram ila yawm al-qiyamah. The halal of Muhammad is halal till the day of judgment. The haram of Muhammad is haram until the day of judgment. If you can't observe that halal and that haram for some reason, and I'm not justifying it, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. No, you should do everything in your ability to apply the halal and to refrain from the haram. But let's say you're being challenged and you are unable to observe it, right? Don't justify it. Don't say in this condition it's halal. No, because انت مو مشرع. You are not a legislator. The legislator in that account is who? Is Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imam. الإمام المعصوم هو يكون مشرع، يعني بلحاظ الولاية. بلحاظ الولاية المعصوم يكون شنو؟ مشرع. وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. هو هذا يكون مشرع مثل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في القضايا الجزئية من أحكام الدين وما إلى ذلك من أحكام. يجي مثلا قضية تعترض على إنسان يعطيه حكم في هذا الموضوع. Something that appears new, has no previous, for example, law in it. He comes to the Imam says what? This is the answer for it. So he becomes a legislator in that regard. قس على ذلك هو حريزا دينه, always make sure that he maintains his religion in a rightful way. طيب, marriage, another issue in Islam, right? I see some youth are laughing and smiling. إن شاء الله كلكم تتزوجوا قبل نهاية شهر رمضان. حق محمد وآل محمد. طبعا هاي للعزابة. People who are married don't get funny ideas. I'm not talking to married men. I'm talking to non-married men, alright? واحدة وكافية وما مخلصين. الحج أبو حسام يقول. اوكي. على فكرة لما الزوج يقول واحدة وما مخلصين، هذا مو معناته انه هو مثلا مو سعيد في حياته، لا، هو سعيد جدا في حياته. الحمد لله. صلى على محمد وآله. شنو هو الهدف من التزويج في الإسلام؟ الهدف من التزويج في الإسلام هو إقامة بيت، يكون هذا البيت حريص على تجنب الحرام. The idea behind marriage in Islam is to establish a house that will eliminate what? Haram. Okay? So you marry a wife, you marry a husband, for the female marrying a male, for the male marrying a female. Don't get any other funny ideas also to be included in relationships, alright? So male-female relationship, and look what Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, in regard to the benefits of getting married. ما بني في الإسلام بناء أفضل من التزويج. لا مسجد ولا حسينية ولا مدرسة، لا. الإمام جعفر الصادق، there is no institute that you can establish in Islam better than marriage. وصلاة المتزوج أفضل من صلاة العازب ب70 مرة. حديث عن النبي. صلاة المتزوج أفضل من صلاة العازب ب70 مرة. The prayer of someone who's married is better than the prayer of someone who's not married 70 times more. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول شر موتاكم العزب. Your worst people to die among you are those who die what? As single people, bachelors, right? Bachelors. Because they are always lured into things that will not make them what? Not make them concentrate on things that are more important. So that constantly. And look what one of our scholars said. He says, لو كانت العزوبية أو الرهبانية مندوحة عند الإنسان لما تزوجت فاطمة وعلي. لا تجادل بعد. Don't argue after that. If being celibate, يعني not married, is a virtue, then Fatima would not have married. Ali ibn Abi Talib would not have married if it was a virtue, not to marry, right? But it is a virtue. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he gets 3 people coming to him and they knock at his door. His wife answers. He said, صفي لنا حياة رسول الله. How does Rasulullah live? He said, يصلي ويفطر. شنو يعني يصلي ويفطر؟ يعني يصلي ويقعد. يصلي ويقعد. يصوم ويفطر. يصوم not, he would fast and he would not fast. يصلي ويفطر. يصوم ويفطر ويتزوج النساء أو وينكح النساء يعني يتزوج النساء. الحديث راوي الحديث شو يقول؟ يقول وكأنهم استقلوا عبادة رسول الله. شو استخفوا بها إنه شلون هذا نبي يصلي ويقعد يصوم ويفطر وبعد فوق كل هالشيء شنو يسوي؟ يتزوج. لا شو هالعبادة؟ لأنه كانوا عم يعلم النبي. فقال أحدهم أصلي الدهر ولا أفطر. أصلي الدهر ولا أفطر. أنا علي نذر لله أصلي ولا أقعد. وقال الآخر وأصوم ولا أفطر. وقال الآخر ولا أتزوج أبدا. فإجا النبي قالوا يا رسول الله اليوم شوية من أصحابك 3 إجوا البيت. قال وما عندهم وما شأنهم. What's the story those people? He said يا رسول الله they asked how is your life? What do you do at home? So we told them that you pray, you sit, you fast, you break your fast and you marry women. And he said and what was their reply? Did they like my lifestyle? They said no يا رسول الله استخفوها. They took it lightly, Ya Rasulullah. They were not very concerned about your acts of worship. So he said, what was their answer? I said, their answer was that one of them said, wherever, I told you, I'll fast, I will. He said, look at the answer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, no, because I know better than them. وعاد الحديث قال أنا أصلي وأفطر. أفطر بالتاء. وأصوم وأفطر وأنكح النساء ومن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. And whosoever abandons my way of life, he is not my follower. ما تزايد على عبادة منه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. مو احنا اللي نزايد على عبادة رسول، مو احنا اللي نزايد على أئمتنا صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم أجمعين. الأمر الثاني في التزويج. النبي يقول وفي حديث مماثل إلى عند الإمام الكاظم صلوات الله وسلامه عليه بفارق كلمة واحدة فقط. النبي يقول إذا أتاكم من ترضون دينه وخلقه فزوجوه إلا تفعلوا تكن فتنة في الأرض وفساد كبير. رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم said if a suitor comes your way, if a suitor شو يعني a suitor؟ يعني someone who wants to marry your daughters. What are the qualities that you should look for? His bank account? The car he's driving? His lineage? من وين جاي؟ سيد ولا مو سيد؟ لا مو سيد، من زوجة؟ صدق ولا؟ اي والله من زوجة. اكو ناس إذا الولد اللي يتقدم لبنتهم أو البنت اللي تقدم لابنهم مو من أهل البيت ما يزوجوه. يقول حتى يبقى النسل. They are in certain cultures if this family is a Sayyid family, if this family is from a Sayyid family, and a suitor comes and asks for their daughter in marriage and he's not a Sayyid, they will refuse to give their daughter in marriage to that person. Why? Because he's not a Sayyid. And we have to preserve the lineage of who? Of a Sayyid. These people claim that they follow AhlulBayt, right? The Shias. Okay, let me see AhlulBayt. Let me see Imam Ali Fatima al-Zahra, Imam al-Hassan, Arabiya, Imam شو اسمه الحسين. إمام الحسين رومية فارسية، عفوا فارسية. شنو هذا؟ خرج عن القاعدة، ما تزوج سيدة علوية. إمام الحسين متزوج واحدة شنو؟ فارسية، ما كانت أصلا في ذلك اليوم شنو؟ مسلمة، أسلمت بعدين. يمكن كانت مسلمة على دينها. فارسية. خلينا ننزل شوي. ننزل شوي، نيجي عند منو؟ عند الإمام الصادق صلوات الله وسلامه، تزوج نوبية. شو هالمصيبة؟ نوبية يعني شنو؟ سودانية. سودانية سوداء. يقولون الإمام الكاظم طلع أسود. الإمام الكاظم سلام الله عليه طلع يميل إلى السمرة الشديدة. شنو عيب يعني؟ عيب يميل الإمام الكاظم للسمرة؟ مرة أنا بأفريقيا كنت، إجاني واحد قال لي صدق والله الإمام الكاظم طلع أسمر؟ قال إيه؟ قلت له إيه والله طلع أسمر الإمام الكاظم. قال شلون طلع أسمر؟ قلت له لأن أمه كانت نوبية سودانية من أهل النوبة، دول أهل النوبة سود مو بيض. قال صدق من صدقك تتكلم؟ قلت له والله. قال والله ما أتشيع بعد اليوم. قلت حظة أنت من صدقك تقول هذا الكلام؟ You're not following, right? Okay. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I was in Africa preaching once, and a young man came and asked me. He said, "Is it true in our tradition they say Imam al-Kadhim was like very dark? He had dark complexions?" I said yes, because his mother was a Nubian from Sudan, and the Nubians are black, the black slaves. All right. So he said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Wallah, I'm serious. It's in the tradition. There are even specific descriptions about Imam al-Kadhim." He said, "From now on, I won't be a Shia." Haji. Is it color preference? Or is it what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا أَتَاكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقُهُ. If a suitor comes to you and he has religion to you, and he has what? Morals. Allahu Akbar. إِذَا أَتَاكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ ومنه وخلق. شوف الإمام الكاظم شو يقول: إذا أتاكم من ترضون دينه وأمانته. الله أكبر. If a suitor comes to you, you're happy with his religiousness and he is trustworthy. ليش trustworthy؟ trustworthy لأنك تأمن بنتك عنده. لأنك إذا حطيت بنتك عنده شو يسوي بيها؟ يحترمها، يحفظها. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم شو يقول في الحديث؟ يقول في الحديث: إن هو أكرمها، عفوا إن هو أحبها أكرمها، وإن هو كرهها لم يظلمها. هذا اللي عنده شنو؟ دين. The one who has religion, Rasulullah says what about his qualities? Is that if he marries your daughter and he loves her, he will be very generous towards her, right? Because he loves her. Like if he starts hating her, what does he do? The Prophet says he will never be unjust to her. Allahu Akbar. مو يكرهها يطلع لها نجوم السماء وقت الظهيرة. هذا نجوم ما تشوفهم بالنهار، تشوفهم؟ Can you see stars during broad daylight? Well, some women have seen them. ليش؟ لأن المرأة تحب أن تعيش في ظل رجل لا في ذل رجل. صح؟ المرأة تحب أن تعيش في ظل الرجل. A woman would love to live under the shadow of the man, not under the humiliation of a man. Right? غير بس حرف. ظا إلى ذا. في ظل الرجل لا في ذل الرجل. Has to live in honor in her house. طيب ترضون دينه وأمانته زوجوه. Give your daughters in. Why? If you don't do so, what is going to happen? تكن فتنة في الأرض وفساد كبير. إذا بناتنا ما إجاهم من داخل الجالية من يتزوجهم، بعد من يتزوجهم؟ وهؤلاء يدعون إلى النار. الله يقول ولأمة مؤمنة خير من مشركة ولو أعجبته، ولعبد مؤمن خير من مشرك ولو. ليش؟ لأن هؤلاء يدعون إلى النار وتدعون إلى الجنة. معادلة بسيطة جدا. Because these people will call to hellfire and you are calling to what? To paradise. You know? So we need to reorganize our religiousness for our own sake. Not for the sake of anyone else. For our own house, if so to speak. The house of a Muslim community, that we rise or raise ourselves in such awareness, in such بيئة. And that's why Imam Ali صلوات الله وسلامه عليه يحدثنا في خطبة المتقين. That's why Imam Ali speaks to us through the khutbah of المتقين and says what? حريزا دينه. He is always concerned about the safety of his religion. His religion means, and you know what, when I speak about religion, let me be very clear about it. Religion is not just set of rituals. مو بس اللي عنده طبعة ما شاء الله هني أكبر من طبعة السجدة، وبعدين يخون الأمانة ويشتم جاره، والناس لا تأمن بوائقه، وبعدين يقول لك الله أكبر. ها مو دين، هذا طين. Let me be very frank. الدين هو أن يكون هناك مطابقة للقول مع الفعل. إذا الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر، إذا سلوكي في الحياة يجب أن ينهاني عن شنو؟ عن الفحشاء والمنكر. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Salah prevents you from corruption and injustice, or from corruption and committing any form or acts of sinning, or any deviation from the truth, then my way of dealing with others should incorporate and inculcate what? فحشاء and munkar. مو والله يجي الزوج يقول لزوجته والله شو, you know, today I feel that you shouldn't wear the scarf today. المرأة خطية تتحير، شو تسوي هذا؟ تطيعها، تنذب برا البيت. What does she do in that situation, you know? What does she do? تقول له لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. يجب أن يفهم الزوج أن سلطته ليست سلطة قطعية. His authority over his wife, or the authority of a wife over a husband, is not an absolute what? Authority. You cannot say it. You cannot say. You know, إحنا لما نزوج بناتنا بسيدني بأستراليا عندنا 17 prenup. عندنا contract. We have a contract. It has 17 conditions. One of the conditions in the 17 condition is that the husband has no right to violate the wife's right in practicing her religion. وإذا فعل ذلك, and if he uses any of these violation against his wife, يعني مثلا يجبرها على عمل غير محتشم، ما تقدر لأنك أنت وافقت أصلا. Logically you shouldn't, right? لأنه هذا عرضك. بس to make sure that you would not do it. ما يجبرها على عمل غير محتشم، ما يجبرها على ترك الصلاة، ما يجبرها على نزع الحجاب، ما يجبرها على لعب القمار، ما يجبرها على الذهاب إلى الديسكو، ما يجبرها كل هذه الأمور. أوكي. إذا قام بهذه الأمور فللمرأة أن تطلق نفسها نيابة عنه شاء أم أبى، لأنه هذا حقها شنو؟ الشرعي. This is her Islamic right, not for anyone to come and violate her Islamic value system. She has a right not to be forced. Even we have a condition that he should not force her to live away from her parents. كيف؟ وافق وافق، ما توافق ما تتزوج مثلا. Okay? It's up to you. We have these conditions. Study them well. Choose whatever you want, right? But choose the appropriate. And there are ones that are not subject to what? To change. يعني من ال 17 ممكن تغير تبدل، بس من الاشياء اللي ما ممكن تغيرها في العقد شنو؟ الاجبار على ترك شيء معلوم من الدين بالضروره. شيء معلوم من الدين بالضروره، شنو يعني شيء معلوم من الدين بالضروره؟ يعني من ضروريات الدين، من قوائم الدين، من اللي يحفظ الدين امور معينه اذا ما فعلها الانسان خرج عن الدين، وهي شنو؟ الصلاة، الصيام، العبادات، كذا، الخلق الحسن، الأمور هذه اللي معروفة بالدين بالضرورة من أساسيات وحيثيات الدين. Things that are part and parcel of the religious setting up. So if someone pretends, like I think I told you in this community or in another community, بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد وأختم. اللهم صل على محمد. A youth came to me, and I was the imam of a center in Sydney, and he was a regular at our center. One day he came, he asked a very valid question. He said, Sheikh, what constitutes a religious person? شو اللي يخلي إنسان نطلق عليه لفظ متدين؟ زين؟ هذا رجل شنو؟ متدين. قلت له أنت قل لي شنو بتصورك المتدين؟ قال لي اللي يصلي بالصف الأول. قلت له خوش على راسي. وبعد the one that prays in the front line, first line. Okay? I said what next? He said someone that fasts. Jameel, beautiful. Someone that fasts. What else? Someone that reads Quran. Beautiful. Fantastic. Anything else you can think of? Someone that pays charity. Ala rasi. Tamam. Fantastic. What else? Someone that pays khums. You know it. MashaAllah. Alright. And then he said, بعد ما في خلص خلصوا. قلت له okay. Are you sure that's it? That's a religious person? He said it. I said that person that prays in the front line, that pays khums, that pays zakat, that fasts Ramadan, one day you see him just outside the mosque lying. شو تسوي بيه هذا؟ متدين؟ تعطيه لقب التدين؟ Someone standing outside the mosque, the minute he finished his prayer, he went and he lied to someone, and you heard that lie with your own eyes, with your own ears. No, بعد أكثر من شيء. سيء الخلق مع زوجته وأولاده إلى درجة لا تطاق. He has such bad manners with his wife and children and neighbors to such an extent that it cannot be bearable. باوع لي هيك ببراءة الشباب، ببراءة الشباب. قال والله هذا لا إله خص بالدين لا من قريب ولا من بعيد وإن صلى وصام. قلت له خب عرفت فلسفة. And he said what? He said this guy has nothing to do with religion. If he does these things, even if he prayed and he what? Fasted. I said then you knew what makes a religious person, so follow what you know. Follow what you know. Because Islam is comprehensive. You know, it's a comprehensive system of acting. It's not pick and choose when it suits me. Yes, again, I emphasize, if I cannot do it, don't justify it or legitimize it. لا تحلل الموضوع لأنه يناسبك. لأنه في نهاية المطاف أكو رقيب. مين هذا الرقيب؟ رب العالمين سبحانه وتعالى. At the end of the day, I am accountable. You are accountable. My parents are accountable. My children are accountable. My community are accountable to these type of, you know, obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم في مثل هذه الأيام والليالي ليالي القدر العظيمة مثل هذه الليلة طهر قلوبنا واعصمنا عن الزلل. اللهم حبب إلينا حبك وحب نبيك وحب أهل بيتك صلوات الله وسلامه. اللهم اجعل القرآن ربيع قلوبنا. اللهم اجعل القرآن ربيع قلوبنا وزوال همنا وغمنا. Oh Allah, make us among those when they listen to anything they will follow only what is best. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين 5 مرات من قلوبكم الطاهرة إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه. نبدأ ليلتنا بالانفتاح على الله سبحانه وتعالى يطهر قلوبنا يشفي مرضانا يرحم موتانا وموتاكم جميعا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أعلى. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. الأصل. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. بحق محمد وآل محمد وبحرمة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.